One of the things that's important for us to talk about as Christians is how our fear of God, our willing to obey, our need, the call to submit can be twisted towards evil and used against us by the devil. We have this view of sin that thinks it's this prejudice where we think that everything that is sin is ultimately rooted in a lust or like a desire. We want to please this desire, but we shouldn't do that, and that's what sin is. But sin is everything that is darkness. It is everything that is opposed to the light. And we need to be careful that we understand that the morality of God that he's calling us to is light. He's not just calling us to an idea of morality, an idea of what's Christian, an idea of what's good, but he's calling us to what is actually good, what is actually right. And God is trying to get at sin for every bit of what it is, not just certain ideas of sin, but sin itself. And one of the ways that the devil can cause us to sin is by twisting our fear of God. Sin is everything that's twisted. Sin is everything that's perverted. So it's everything that is cruel and gross and mean and all these other things. And the devil absolutely tries to use the fear of God to get us to do evil. And this is actually one of the ways that we find the greatest evil in the world. Because what you have, like, think of, for example, when you see we hear about these people who sacrifice their children. If you hear some of these accounts, like, people sacrifice babies in fire. And what caused them? What caused them to walk in that great darkness? It was not a lust. It wasn't, I love this violence. It was fear. It was obligation. It was this idea that in order to get whatever they needed, they were so desperate that in order to get whatever they needed, they had to offer up this precious child to God. They had this fear of God twisted. And people today talk about how religion is evil. Well, that's untrue, because true religion isn't evil, but religion can absolutely be captured to do the greatest forms of evil and the greatest forms of darkness in this world. And they're not wrong about that, because that is what you see is similar to like those children's sacrifices. Is people are obligated and pressured to do evil in the name of you need to obey God, in the name of fearing God. This is what you see with like extremists of whatever religion, where they go and they are a suicide bomber, or whatever it is. They do evil in this belief that they are serving God. And so many people, they believe that they have to do this. This is what you see like in these cults, in Mormon, these Mormon religions, is that these people are forcing themselves to subject themselves to the grossest, most horrible things. Why? Because they've had the name of fear God, obey God twisted. And this is the exact same thing that can be done to Christians. And it happens all the time. Christians will serve this pressure. So many Christians submit to this pressure and they obey this pressure because it comes in the name of God. It comes in the name of, well, this is what's Christian. This is what's right doctrine. And they will subject themselves to those things. And in order to really resist what is evil, to resist sin, we have to be aware of how the devil can come to us in this tactic. In Romans 16:19, it says, "For your obedience is known to all, so that I rejoice over you. But I want you to be wise as to what is good and innocent as to what is evil." The point is that we have to protect our obedience. We have to protect our submission. And, so many people today, they talk about obey God. You need to obey God. You need to keep the word of God. But the spirit in that can be very different from what is truly of God. And we have every right to resist that. We have every right to stand in the face of what people say is of God and test the spirit of it and test whether it is really working light or it's working darkness. And if we are to really be people of righteousness, we need to reject all darkness. And that includes whatever comes in the name of Christianity, whatever comes in the name of obey God. But so many of us are so afraid to resist that. We're so afraid to reject what comes in the name of obey God, because what does the devil say to us? You're not willing to obey the word. You're just insistent upon your sin. You're just wanting your corrupt will. You're not willing to love those people, those types of things. And it's obligating and it's twisting and it's driving us to do things that are not good, to go against what is goodness and light and health and righteousness and true godliness, and pushing us to do the opposite of those things because of the way it's framed as being the morality of God or the word of God or those types of things. The devil's agenda here is twofold. It's pulling us down into darkness, but as we serve that darkness and we preach that darkness in God's name, this drives people from God, because what we are ultimately preaching is not a real righteousness. It's not a real goodness. We are preaching that corrupt religion. And in order to be people who are truly in the light, who are truly of the light, we have to rise beyond those things. If we fall into the same twisted obligation as a Muslim extremist, maybe not in the same degree, yes, but like the same pressure, if we are subjected to the same pressure, if we are fearful and serve the same pressure, then we are not truly being of the light. And that's why we have to work so hard to protect our obedience. We have to protect our submission. We have to be careful, because when Israel, they served these other gods. Was it just lust that led them to these other gods? What was the thing that led them over and over to these other idols? It was also fear. They were afraid that if they didn't, bow the knee to these other gods, that these other gods were real and that they would punish them. And so therefore they allowed that fear to drive them to serve these gods. And again, like I said, so many of us, we will allow ourselves to serve that pressure. We don't resist that pressure. When the devil comes along and you're like, well, in your conscience, you're like, I don't think that's really right or fair. The devil comes along and says, well, is that really loving? Is that what, a Christian should do? And we say, I need to just submit myself to that pressure because, I'm not willing to do what's right. When your conscience is what's right, your conscience is telling you that this isn't a right pressure. It's telling you that these things are wrong, but you submit to the opposite pressure because you believe that it's Christian, and because this is what Christians are doing. So many are just submitting to these things. They're saying, oh, I just need to be more submissive. I just need to be more loving. I just need to be more generous. All these things that get put on us, and we serve those things rather than the true form of godliness. And we have every right and responsibility to fight for the true form of righteousness and godliness. And we need to see how much the devil has just taken over the church with this spiritual pressure, and how much we join with that pressure when we submit to it. And it's the same as serving false gods. It's the same as serving these false these idols. It's the same thing. We give in to that pressure, and then we begin to serve it. We begin to perpetuate it, and we are joining with that darkness rather than opposing it.